Yes. Okay. Hello everyone. Welcome to Global Bizapps Day 2020, powered by D365 Gems. I'm Sagar Rupani. I'm moderating this session along with MVP Prasant Shukla. Hope you all guys are doing well and keeping safe. This session is presented by Krishna Vandanapu. Krishna will be talking about top 10 reasons why your Power Apps is not performant. Krishna Vandanapu is a SharePoint architecture working in IT industry from last 15 years. Krishna has provided more than 250 solutions in Power Apps community, and Krishna worked with various versions of SharePoint, Office 365 and Power Apps. And Krishna is an active blogger, trainer and a public speaker. Before I hand over this session to Krishna, I would like to mention that if you have any query or question, please feel free to drop it in a chat window and we will take that either during the session if possible or during the QA time. Thank you again guys for joining this session and enjoy your session. Krishna, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sagar, for a wonderful introduction. Uh, Before I start anything, hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know which time zone you are. Hope you are all safe on this pandemic time. I'm Krishna. Today, I'm going to discuss about 10 top 10 reasons why your Power App is not performant. I'm going to cover various scenarios with demos. Before I go into that topic, here is my YouTube channel. You can scan with the what do you call that image, and you can subscribe on that if you see that value it is valuable. And before I go into the session, a quick introduction about me, along with Sagar's introduction. I'm Krishna. I have 15 years of IT experience. I'm a proven Power Apps lead and Power Platform lead. I have contributed more than 270 solutions in the community. I'm a super user in the community. I'm a certified solution architect and Office 365 local user group active speaker. I'm recently a new YouTuber as well. I have completed my certifications MS 100 and MS 101. Okay, before any further delay, let's go on to various reasons we as app makers commit a mistake to pull down our app performance. Okay, first one, I have seen in the community very often that most of the times app makers create an app using forms. Do not do that. App Forms in Power Apps is a big hurdle. But if the app is very tidy and it is only a 3 or 4 screens app, absolutely you can go ahead. The reason behind that is when you implement a app with forms, it will get unnecessary controls along with that. Let's see why we should use form and why you shouldn't use the form. First one is can implement a small app and a simple app, as I said already. And if it is not a good option to implement if the app is with multi-screen or stages. I will come to know why we should not use down the line, because there are some hurdles or some hard stops in the Power App with the number of controls and the performance. Implement forms with only required fields from the data source. It can implement only with the required fields, meaning that I when you import the form, it will get all the fields in the associated with the SharePoint list or a data table. So SQL table. When you add the form, it will load everything. So ensure that I am selecting all the unnecessary field and delete it, because each and every each and every field in the form is a data control. Data control will come with four controls behind the scenes. One is error handler, and the other one is the default value what it has to be shown, and third one is whether it is a mandatory field or not, and the fourth one is error handler. So ensure that we really need that control or not. If not, please go ahead and delete, because it will pull down the number of controls which we could add down the line. Never import all the fields of the data source and hide on the screen. This is what I mean. I have seen in the community that my app is not performant. When I go and help them, they have added farms everywhere and they started hiding the controls in the farm, which is not good idea. Though you hide the control, the farm load is getting high. So do not do that. Use the same use the same farm for both edit and view of the list item. So when you import a farm, when you add a farm has a default mode property. Make use of that property. If I want to edit, just say as edit. If it is a view, set the farm property as view. Next one, can you only can only the fields as part of the data source. Can only the fields part of the data source means that I have a farm. Inside the farm, if I want to add a gallery, unfortunately we cannot do that. And another thing is that we can do, in the sense we can do, but handling the gallery inside a farm is very difficult. You will have to write a lot of code there. We know the slogan for Power Apps is low code, no code. But if we add all the controls inside a farm, we will end up making a big project. And next one, cannot submit the farm if I have any of the control populating outside the data source. Example, I have created by mistakenly, I have created the gender as a free text, but user had come back and said that, hey, the gender should not be as a free text. It should show as a drop down. If I change from free text to drop down, what happens is I cannot use submit form of the farm because I have added a custom control outside my farm data. So I'll have to change the behavior of saving the data back to data source by adding patch control. Can implement all the regular controls. As I said, I can implement all the regular controls, say like text box, drop down, radio buttons, everything. But as soon as I add the gallery, it will make life messy. So always remember when we are adding forms, these are all the major important points we have to remember. If you do not don't miss any of this to ensure your app is performant. And the next one is SharePoint as a data source. Most of the times what happens is SharePoint is not a premium. So people will jump onto SharePoint as a data source. But do remember, my friends, Maker has to ensure the below points while considering the SharePoint as a data source because it has few good points and few bad points. One is a list or a library can store up to 30 million records. Big wow factor that is. But it is not a relational database. What is a relational database? Relational database in a nutshell, I have two tables. Table one is referring to data inside table two. I have a relation between these two. Example, I have employee table and I have the salary details. In salary details, I have employee ID. If I had to show the salary details of an employee in a view screen, I have to read the first name and last name of the employee from employees table, which means that these two are related to each other. But unfortunately, SharePoint is not a good place to implement a relational database. Again, it is a simple, small scenario. There are complex scenarios which will make our life messy. When we consider SharePoint as a best data source for relational data. So which means that we always have to read the user data, what is there and how we could implement, whether we could implement SharePoint as a backend or not. Next one is can improve filter performance by adding indexes on important columns. These are all the points which are the left hand side or the 10 the points which every app maker should know. And these are all the points usually we don't consider and we will end up our app is not performant. What does that mean implementing the indexes? When we are implementing app, we will definitely end up doing filters many times across our application. When we are doing filter, when we perform a filter on top of a indexed column, the performance will be clip away. If it is not a indexed column, it will take huge time because it is not indexed. And one more thing is that we all have to remember is indexing cannot be created on a SharePoint list if the data is more than 20,000 records, and indexes can be implemented maximum of 20. So please do remember these points to ensure that my app is performant. And no premium license needed. We all know that. Very good, super duper. But app will not work if the list has lookup plus people group and manager columns is greater than 12. Though it is free licensed, and while we are creating, if we start creating people picker fields, select 10 fields, and manager fields 10, and manager metadata fields 10, and the lookups are 5, then boom, it will not work at all. And the biggest bummer is the downside of this is it is at the SharePoint level. There is no relation with the Power Apps. And one more thing, when we are importing SharePoint as a data source, there is no way I can limit my number of columns coming from SharePoint. It will get everything, but however, we can show columns and hide columns, but by default, it will get everything. If the list has more than this many number of columns, it will not work. App will directly come down. We always see this kind of a behavior when we have app is working fully functional yesterday, but today it is not working. When I go and see the list settings, I have one more new column with people picker, which has increased the count of 12, which will not work at all. So always do remember. Can show larger data in gallery with auto load in Power Apps. Performance is relatively slow when you compare with other data sources. First thing is, we know that when we add a gallery and provide the SharePoint list as a data source, it will automatically load the data because it does the delegation and it will load first 100 records. When we scroll down, it will load next 100, scroll down next 100, it will keep on go. But however, when you compare with other data sources like SQL, CDS, the performance with SharePoint is relatively low. Power Apps supports delegation with SharePoint. There is a beautiful concept called delegation, which itself will take 2 to 3 hours. I don't want to touch on that point. There is a delegation which will get the data as per the app limit. When we get the data, there are some functions which supports Power Apps with respect to SharePoint as a data source. Performing group by, however, it is supporting performing group by is a challenge if the list grow more than 2000 records. This is challenging. It is not possible. I don't say it is not possible because I myself have created a video on how to implement grouping on SharePoint if the data is more than 15,000 records. I repeat, it is 15,000 records, more than 15,000 records. We can do the grouping, but however, it is not that simple and that easy. So having said, my friends, when you are creating SharePoint, ensure that all my right hand points are considered to ensure my app is performant. And the next one is implementing controls. As I was keep telling, farms is not a good idea because we have a hard stop of 500 control limit in Power Apps. If the Power App is more than 500 controls, unfortunately, the app will go down in performance the more you add the controls. If you end up adding farms in Power App, it is using a control count without our knowledge. So we will end up low performant apps, and always use galleries. Never ever add multiple labels and multiple text boxes. If you see, this can be a repeated thing. And always implement components if you see that the same control is using across the screens. Implementing components is a very good idea. Never ever use the same component across the screen. Next one, group the controls in screen to apply common properties. What does that mean? I have a screen. In that screen, I have 20 controls. In the 20 controls, 10 controls I want to hide depending on one of the drop down selection. So if I do not group those 10 controls, and if I want to hide those 10 controls, I have to go to that each and every control and say visible property hide, visible property hide, visible property. But if you group that and apply the visible property at the group level, it will be maintainability easy, and also Power App need not to do each and every control level. It will apply the behavior at the group level, performance will be high. And next one is add canvas controls for auto scroller. most of the times what happens is if you come up with a long form, we will end up creating multiple screens. So the more number of screens, the app performance will go down. Rather than implementing more controls, more screens in the app, implement a canvas control inside the screen. There is a control called canvas control which you will get with the scroller, vertical scroller screen. That screen will by default come with that control. So take that control, add it inside your screen and add the controls. The scroller will automatically come and the vertical scroller will come. You can add as many controls as you want. And next one, and a very beautiful one, is use HTML control. Why to use HTML control? We have a tendency that if we have to add a icon, just go to Google, just get the icon, add it into media library. Do not do that. Media library has a hard stop of 200 MB limit. If you start importing multiple images into the media library, it will make the app very heavy. And what happens is we all know that Power App is basically created for mobility. What does it mean is when I'm using Power Apps, my target is my audience could be a web user or a iPad user, nor a mobile user. If I start importing multiple icons and I'm increasing the weight of my app and the user is on a low profile mobile, the app will take tremendous time to load the controls on the screen. So the reason behind that is I'm loading the media library heavily, and when I need to add that image into the gallery or on the screen, I need to add a control and refer to that control image control and refer that image on that image control, which means that I'm losing two things. One is I'm increasing the media library and also adding unnecessarily adding one more control to refer that image. But if you use HTML control, I can get whatever I want with one control and the performance will be high. So a few of the examples are these. This is with the shadow. If I had to give this shadow, I don't have a way. I have to create an image using, if you are good at Photoshop, you can create it in Photoshop and import into app. Or if I want to create a simple phone icon, again, download from web and implement. And this is a HTML control. The reason why I use this is most of the times user come from a web background with the .NET and Java. In .NET and Java, they can use CSS and they can render the text the way they want. But unfortunately, out of the box, Power Apps has a very limited styles. But if you use HTML control to render your text, you can make your app more elegant. Let's see a demo on that. And few websites I wanted to refer to you is CSS generator, which will give this kind of a control and backend div code, and W3 schools will give all these has hexadecimal numbers for all your icons. Let me share my screen with Power App. Sagar, please let me know once you see my screen.
Sure.
You see my screen?
Yes, I can see.
Great. The first thing I wanted to let you guys know that this is the CSS generator website wherein I can just provide whatever the way I want. I can just say that my shadow is red. The beauty with this one is I can just say how I want the styling and everything. And this is the only piece I need to be included as part of my HTML control. Do you see that all this thing, all this styling I can render at this level and the blur level, everything I can render here. And the border I want border shadow. If I had to say that this kind of a control, if I need to create, it will take most of the times. What happens is if I create a tabular form, a tab orientation, this kind of a HTML control will be super duper handy. And when I just do this, I'm getting the below code with the rendering and everything. Let me go ahead and add a HTML control here and say that I'm getting my standard example. Let me go ahead and take this and see how I can render this as part of my Power App. Just as simple as that. And just increase the size. Boom. I have my control ready. And if I want to change my control's behavior, I can change by just saying like, okay, I have this here. And if I want to change the color or radius, if I want to change the radius, I'll say 25 as the radius. It will go. And if I change the radius to, this will be more handy than, and most of the times when we are adding a button has a problem that I will show you. This is a demo in global Bizapps. It rendered automatically, but if I wanted to create a button and if I want to just say the same thing over here with the, it will not fit in. It is going, I have to expand the text. And if I want to enter a new line character inside my text of a button, it is not possible. It will show the same thing over there. But if I want to get a new line character inside my control, I can happily get it and say that I don't want from there. I want a new line from here. I can easily push it out because it is end of the day. It is a simple HTML control. So I am getting more and more handy when I use HTML control while rendering the text as part of my image or a button. And the next one is if I want to include a icon, I can include the icon like this, as simple as just adding a HTML control. And this HTML control code is this. When I change that value, it will automatically go change, and the controls are there very much as part of our W3, our own W3 schools. When you go to this W3 schools, I have all these hexadecimal code, and example, I am implementing a app which shows the weather reports dynamically. If I wanted to show if it is a rainy day, I can use this code as that. Boom. If it is a rainy day, I get it. And I can control this very happily with the if condition. If the value is, if the temperature is this, and if the value is that, I can render this div tag, or in fact, I can write a if condition just to change this code alone. So I am decreasing. If I want to show sunny day, I can use this code as this. It will be a sunny day. So if I add a if condition over here, I can just show if the temperature is this and this. What I'm getting is I'm using one control and I'm changing the icon dynamically. The next one I wanted to show is I want to create a header for my app, but with a funky format. How I can do that is I cannot do that if I use the out of the box styles. Now, if you go and see that, this is the title of my app, and I can change the app styles. Say like if I want to change from font family, I will add a font family. Just add this. There it is. And this way I can make my app more elegant and more beautiful. So never ignore the HTML control rather than importing multiple icons into the screen. And the next one is local and global variables. When you are using the Power App, we know that we can store the data using three different ways. One is a local variable, and the other one is a global variable, and the last one is using collections. Do remember, when you are creating a variable, it is consuming the memory inside the device where you are running, whether it is a web, whether it is a mobile or a tab. So always do remember that if you are creating variable, ensure that a variable is needed only at that screen level or across the screens. If it is across the screens, then only you create set as a variable. If not, always use update context as a variable so that the variable scope will go out as soon as you move out of the screen. Next one is exception handling in Power Apps. When you are creating app, ensure that we have to give a pleasant experience to the user when they are using the app. I don't want my user to come back and say that, hey Krishna, I'm getting runtime errors while I'm running this app, because we have not handled exceptions properly. Exception handling in Power Apps, most of the times people say that no, it is not there. No, it is very much there. It is very much there. Exception handling is very much there on various ways. I have created a video on my YouTube channel with 5 to 6 scenarios I have covered. Taking time into consideration, I wanted to cover the most important two aspects. Is when we are showing user details as part of the landing screen or while creating the screen, we have to read users manager name. Most of the times what happens is AD team will update the user's manager name by default. At times they miss the mapping, but when they miss the mapping, unfortunately, the code, whatever we are using, Office 365 user.manager v2 does not go quite. It will throw out an exception saying that I don't find the object. So null value pointer will come because I'm finding a mail on top of a null. So null pointer exception will come. How to handle that is always use is error. Is error is a beautiful function which will hold if there is any error, it will give as true. If it is error, we will say like there is no manager for the selected user. If there is no error, then we will go ahead and show the selected user's manager name. And most of the times when we are creating a form, we will use submit form, and user will never know what are all the mandatory columns or mandatory fields as part of my backend data source. If I use the submit form, it will submit the data only when all my mandatory fields are in place. If my mandatory fields are missing, submission will go fail, but user will never know that. Never ever know that. So how can we handle that? We can always handle that using on failure method or property of the farm. Always remember, we can handle failures at both farm submission and patch as well. For the patch always returns the newly created ID or updated ID, sorry, updated record as a result set. If the result is blank, which means that update is failed. If the result is not blank, the update is success when we are using patch. Let's see how that works in Power Apps. As I was telling just before, the vertical control, this is the canvas control. If I see the canvas control by default, it is coming with the vertical scroller. The advantage with that is when I'm adding the gallery and when I say this as a sample list, and if I want to increase the height of this, I can increase to such an extent that say like 850 as my gallery height. Now I will increase the gallery height to gallery to sample list, and I will just put it over here. And if I just keep on adding one more, one more, and if you see, end of the day, I am not losing my context anywhere. I am able to add any number of controls inside my screen, and my vertical scroller is keep going. So this way, if I want to add multiple controls on the screen, always use this canvas control on your app. So it will give you more and more easy hand to add the controls inside the screen without any hassle. Let's coming to the submit form handling. As I was telling, I'm just giving a sample list as a data source to this, and form default mode. When we are creating a form, when we are adding a form into the screen, I will get only either display edit or a display form. But if I want to turn this form as a new form, how I can do that is default mode of the form. When you go to the default mode of the form, I have three default modes. One is edit, new, and view. This is what I was telling. When you're using forms, you always ensure that default mode is set as per the need of the data rendering on the screen. If it is required to be edit, edit. If it is required to be new, now in my case here, I want it as a new screen. Now, if I wanted to submit, I can use either submit form of form farm 3 is my farm name. Most of the times we will go with submit form because I need not to write a lot of code inside that. It is very beautiful, very good, handy, but always do remember it will not submit if user missed to provide any of the mandatory field as part of. If assume that title is a mandatory field and I did not add because user don't want to see that. Now I don't see while I'm submitting title, submitting the form, title is not there. But if I just submit, it will not go ahead. It will not go ahead and submit the data because mandatory field is missing. How do I handle that is on failure. I can always say that, hey, notify submission failed. So if the form got submitted properly, it will get submit. If there is any issue, it will notify the user as submission failed so that my end user will know, okay, there is something wrong, submission got failed. If you don't do that, user will never know that. So next one is assume that if I'm using a patch, how it will happen is sample list, defaults, sample list, and followed by the syntax for this is I will say whatever the columns I wanted to submit as part of my patch, say sample or sample. If I submit, it will go ahead and create a new entry. But if I don't handle this properly, saying like update context, where submission, if I do this, what happens is if the submission gets success, it will return the recently created record. If it is there, then it is fine. So immediately what I will do, if is blank of this record, then I know that submission got failed. Submission is failed, or I'll say submission success. This way, I can inform my user that whether my code got rendered successfully or is there any issue in that. This is very important to ensure my app is performant and my app is up to the mark when I'm giving it to the end user. And the next one is code reusability. This is one of my favorite topic. The reason is most of the times what happens is user will end up using the same code across my app, across the app. In screen one, I am submitting the data back to list A. Again, screen three, I had to submit the data to list three, list one. So screen three and screen one, I'm using the same code iteratively because most of you are background with .NET or Java. In .NET and Java, we can create data layer.cs. In data layer.cs, I can add all my functions and I can call from anywhere in my solution to ensure that my code is reusable. We call them as functions. But unfortunately, Power Apps don't have custom or user defined functions. But how do you handle that? But there are two ways to handle that. One is local reusable code blocks and global reusable code blocks. Where are those, Krishna? Those two we should create. The business scenario for that is, assume that I have a screen wherein I have multiple entries in the screen. User want to submit as and when they want. But however, my screen has 40 controls. It is tedious and I need dependency from my team member. Example, I need some more information from Sagar. Sagar is unfortunately not at his desk. I had to wait for his presence. So, but we know that session time will go out. There should be a way to do a intermittent save or sorry, intermediate save. So intermediate save also updating the same SharePoint list, and submit is also updating the same SharePoint list. How I can do that is, assume that this is my screen, and in my screen I have added a farm. If you see, this is a farm, and each and every control of the farm I have added a visible with one variable. What it does is, I am updating when I say next. I want to show the next set of controls. This is the beauty with using farms. But again, when you are using farms, ensure that my app is not a big app. And when I am going onto the back, it is say like next button, and this is my back button. And in next button, I'm say whatever I'm doing the same thing over here. And when I go here, next, I am showing the next set of fields, because for all these fields, I have set my visible property as this. If the visible property is true, this set of fields will come. If the visible property is false, the second set of fields will come. So this way I can handle my screen with the same set of fields using forms. But the point here is, if I want to submit the data back with multiple levels or multiple places, how I can use the code reusable way. How I can do that is two ways. One is, if I have a submit button, I say submit. Using submit, in the submit button, I am saying patch. Remember, we are doing intermediate save, so we cannot, unfortunately we cannot use the form.submit, because when I do the forms.submit, the entire data will go. But I want to save whatever it is available on the screen. So title, say like sample. For the ease, I'm saying a sample. Ideally, we have to select whatever the field it is relevant to. And now I have created the code for button. That Step one, local reusable code blocks. Local reusable code blocks means that the code can be reusable only at the screen level. It cannot be reused across the screens. So how I can do that is, I can always select that button from my other control, button 7. What happens is, if I click this control, I'm invoking the code behind the button, which means that when I save the when I want to modify the code to save the data, I can always change the data or change the code over here, and that will make my life easy. I don't have to change code multiple places as and when I need to change the code. So one place I can do, but this is very good. I can use the code and I can submit the code if it is at the screen level. But I have screen 2, Krishna. In this screen 2 also, another screen. From this screen, can I submit the data? Submit from this screen. When I try to access, when I try to access button 7 from here, see what happens. It will say not available. Selected control that is not on this screen. So which means that I cannot select the button or any button control which is outside my screen. But how I can enable or invoke the code which is outside my screen is, that is where the beautiful part is toggle control. Add a toggle control. Where is the toggle control? add this toggle control and write the code at the toggle control level. And toggle control has a different behavior that it has on change property and default property. Default property is the key here because if the property is false, it will be false. If the property is true, it will turn to true. And when it is turned from false to true, true to false, I am executing my code. So let's go ahead and change the code as update context. Oh, sorry. It has to be as set because I want to use the same variable outside my control, outside my screen, the same variable. Now I'll say that. And here also, I don't have to use this. I'll say this. And on the other screen also, I'll come to the other screen. Here, I will say setting the variable. I am just setting the variable. What happens is, if you see, this control is off now. When I click, it is on. And if you notice that it is storing the data to the backend. And now again, I'm clicking on submit. It is again turned off. As and when I do the change, the on change control will get invoked and the code behind that on change will automatically get execute. And when I go here, when I click on this, it will again change my screen control, sorry, toggle control from off to on and on to off. This is how I can reuse my code across that. Next point is how I can ensure that the same place I can write more than one code block. What does that mean is if I want to centralize my data, how I can centralize this, I can say that code block. I'll say block one is this and where code block. This I'm getting an error because I'm not setting that variable. Okay, I'll say set code block as block one. Similarly, if I want to ensure this one with block two, I'll say block two. When I come here and go here, next one is block two. Block two, I say notify sample code. If I format this, switch also has a default behavior that if I don't specify anything, it'll say like, come on to this, no code provided. Now, if I click this, block two should get executed. And if I click this, block one get executed. Let's see that. See that? Which means that I can happily replicate my data layer.cs behavior, which we are always more fan in while implementing .NET under Java coding. So this way I can replicate that and I can centralize my code in Power Apps as well. So make use of this, which will improve the performance of your app and also code maintainability. And the next one is always avoid multiple calls to the server. Where when we are getting the data from our data table and we need to get more than one field data from the data table, we always do this. We know that the same table, we are getting the ID, subject, start and end. But what happens here is when we are doing this, it will make multiple calls to the database to get each and every value. The best way to do that is replace that with this syntax that I am setting a variable using the lookup. Using this lookup, I'm getting the data and I'm storing it into my local variable. So this variable will act as a record now because lookup with this syntax returns the record as a return value, and on the return value I can get ID, subject, start and end. When you compare these two, I have reduced my database calls from 4 to 1, which is very high performant. Always remember, database calls are high expensive. Next one, avoid nested if statements. When we have to compare multiple scenarios, Do not implement and make your code complex by implementing nested if. I agree that we are all from .NET and Java background. We know how to write if statement, but avoid writing if multiple if statements, because always a conditional statement improve the complexity of the app. How we can do that? Improve the same functionality using switch. The beauty with switch is the maintainability is easy and the performance will be immensely great, because it will look at the value and it will just jump onto the relevant branch and it will execute the relevant code block. Next one, and very important one, is text box with the delay load property. How it will be important is, let me go ahead and create a screen, create an app. In fact, hope we are up to the time, Sagar.
Yeah, still we have 18 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. So while creating the SharePoint app, I'm using my this list table and I'm using my sample list. And when I connect, it will create an app with three screens by default. One is a new and the browse and edit. These are the three screens by default will come. But however, in the browse screen, I get the default as a text followed by a gallery. What it does is when I just search something, it will get all the result sets. But how it is important here is when you go and see for all the new apps, whatever we are creating these days, by default, delay output is coming as true. But apps which are created back in 2018 or 2019, it will not get this property because this property was added very recently, early January. This property was added. The beauty with this property is, I will show you. I have disabled that delay load property. Now, if I just see that monitor monitor is the one we will come to know how many calls we are making to the data source. And this is very handy while we are debugging the app. Now there are no calls to anywhere. Now if I had to say that K, I just entered K. If you see, I have not completed my search, but it made a call to the database. And if I say R, one more call. If I say I, one more call. So because I have not enabled my delay load, what delay load is, delay load will wait for user to complete their key in. If I just say true, and if I clear the calls, and if I try that as sample, it will make only one call. This is the only call. So which means that when I enable the delay load, app is waiting to user to complete their provided text. If they once they wait for the keystroke, that is when it will make a call. It will wait for the user keystrokes. And if we see that more more elaboratively, when I just say that now the value of that is, say, what is the text box control text box one and text box one dot text. If I enable that, say KRIS, it didn't show me that until unless I wait, until unless I complete, it didn't show me. Now it showed. But if I just turn off that delay property, it is live. It is immediately going. If you see that, as and when I'm typing there, it is coming over here, which means that it won't wait for the user to complete their text key in. So always remember, if when we are implementing on top of a search, never ever go with text without delay property. And the next one is avoid creating collections and iterating for simple calculations. Example for that is I have a collection here. if I want to validate what are the number of days remaining for my checkout, usually I have seen people creating another collection and adding the value or iterating through the collection. No need. Add a function, use a function out of the box function called add columns. Using add columns, we can achieve that function very straightforward. How we can do that is, example, in this example, I have created the collection, this very same example I have taken, and I wanted to show number of days left for this gallery, for this reservation. If you see that, what I did is add columns. I have added a column called number of days left. But if you see natively, that column is not there as part of my collection. But while I'm providing the items to the collection, I have added a new column called number of days, and I have added my formula over here, and I can see all my number of days left over for each and every reservation. The beauty with this is I don't have to iterate through my collection. I don't have to create sub collections to calculate the simple value. Always use out of the box functions. Never ever iterate through the collection to avoid, to improve the complexity. That will improve the complexity. And the next one is simplify the code while we are writing the code, in case of adding a new entry or updating the existing entry. If I had to walk through this code here, what I'm trying to do is, if the item is there already as part of my data source, then update. If it is not there, then add a new entry. How I'm doing is, first I'm doing a lookup. If the lookup is blank, then add a new entry. If not, update the entry if it is there. If it is not, then add an entry. Here I am doing multiple times. How I can replace that is, there is a function called Kolaski in Power Apps. What that does is, it will, and if we see the syntax of that function, the function will look for the first non-blank value, Kolaski blank 1, which will give 1 as my result because the first one is blank. And if I say the same thing with multiple values, Kolaski blank empty string blank empty string 3, I'll get the value as 3 because the first value I see in my provided text, provided set of data is 3 is my value. So if I use the same function here, and if I say lookup my table and a condition, if the data is there, it will return the record set, and that will be considered. If it is not there, by default, it will jump onto defaults. And this will remain same because I'm going to add or update the same columns, whether it is a new column, whether it is a new row or an existing row. This way I can improve my app performance immensely. And always use remove if, update if I had to do a bulk operations on top of a list rather than iterating through the entire collection and do it. How that works is,
Krishna, sorry for interruption. We have 10 minutes.
I'm done almost, like last few sites.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, last slide, in fact. This are the few other aspects I wanted to cover. Maker should know all these points 100% to ensure the app is performant. First point, make use of monitor function to see the database calls, which we have already learned while we are looking at the database calls, and republish the app on every 3 months to upgrade the app with new performance aspects. Always publish the app because if there is any performance fine tunes at the compiler level, that will be picked when you do a republish on the app. Check for the advanced settings to see what is new. What does that mean is, go to the app settings, advanced settings. This will show you what are all the new preview features. One of the preview feature I would like to cover is container. Container control is there as an experimental feature, but it is a really good feature. What it exactly does is, when you add the container, I can encapsulate all the relevant fields as part of the container, and I can apply the visible or styles on top of the container, and all the controls inside the container will by default will get adapted to those properties. So always look at the advanced settings to see what is new at Power Apps level. Next one is minimize the data sources or service connections in the app. Do not create the connectivities to SharePoint, SQL, and Office 365 connectors unless and until it is really needed, because each and every connector has to be loaded when we are running the app. So always do remember whether this app is required, this connector is required or not. If it is really required, then only you add it. And next one is avoid uploading images in media. We already discussed how we can avoid uploading media into the media gallery. We can use make use of HTML controls to ensure my app is performant. Ensure there are no delegation warnings with the help of app checker. What does that mean is in app, I can always see, is there any and delegation warnings or accessibility. In this app, I can see accessibility warning and performance issues. I have these are 4 level of performance issues. I have just always look in the performance area of the app and address all the performance pain points to ensure that my app is performant. While clicking like this, I'll know where it is the issue. Always look here and ensure my app is performant. Your app is performant, and explore the controls and various screens to ensure that the app is performant at any point of time. Always explore that what are all my various options. Don't go with only blank screen, go with this scrollable screen. And if it is a list, I have a list screen directly available. Always make use of various other controls. Most of the times we tend to create add a calendar and add a gallery on the right hand side, do this on click behavior. But beauty is I have a screen with the calendar behavior by default. I can add a calendar here, and this one will automatically show the events on inside that calendar. So always explore the options what are coming inside my Power Apps. And this is my contact details. I'm highly available on Twitter and LinkedIn, and this is my YouTube channel. I have covered more in detail on exception handling and various functions in Power Apps. If you see this is informative, go and subscribe onto my YouTube channel for more informative details and all my further YouTube videos, wherein I'm going to create a new video series with flow baby steps with flow, which is going to be a best video, best to be a, which is going to be handy for all the people who are coming to Power Automate and Power Apps, Power Apps as a new developer. Over to you, Sagar. But last but not least, thank you so much for your time and patience for my session. If you have any questions, please ask me.
Guys, do we have any questions? You can
Thanks,
directly
Krishna, for a
ask.
wonderful session. It was great set of tips.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Deepesh.
Krishna, it was very informative session. We might never have seen these kind of small things that we shall not use the medias kind of thing, and how the app can be a bulkier and it will take a time to load.
Yeah,
Generally, people look around for, okay, if that is available, let's use that one, rather thinking on the performance kind of things. So yeah, there are certain kind of these tips which we could never have thought of.
yeah.
So, guys, if you have any queries, you can please put it into chat window, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question directly to Krishna. We have last 5 minutes.
As I said, guys, I was not able to cover exception handling in detail in my video in my channel. I have covered more than 5 to 6 scenarios. Uh, have a look on that, and if you see that videos are useful, subscribe to my channel for further updates.
Sure, don't worry,
Sure,
Krishna
of
will be
course.
calling you for the next speaking sessions where you can present all the other things as well.
Of
Thank you.
course, like, yeah, it was really informative. Just adding to what Vivek said, one of the best blogs I have written in the last 10 years in community is about performance, to be very honest. And with apps, it's very important. One of the comments that I really appreciate, Krishna, is about, how much you should refresh your apps. It is low code, no code. We understand that. But you should not consistently change the apps so quickly, because user training and adoption is important no matter if we are doing and we are able to do apps very quickly. It's nothing to do with performance. Something I've realized with my customers, that it is pretty important how much is the frequency of how you should change your apps. And that's a very practical, basic, common sense kind of a thing. Let's say I'm used to doing something in a certain way. I don't want to change it every month, right? So if it is low code, that is okay. But no matter it is performance or whatever reason, it should not be changed so much frequently. We'll of course want to invite you to many of our other events like meetups, virtual hours, and we do a May-based community learning day as well. Thanks for your time today. It was really informative, and we thoroughly enjoyed the deep dive that you have given in terms of performance for Power Apps. Thank you,
Thank you
Krishna.
so much. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Krishna.
Okay. So I think I'll stop the recording now because there are no questions as well.
Yes, yes, please.
Thank you.